Okay, so self-employment tax, remember that's the Social Security and Medicare tax that is due by the individual who is self-employed. They have to pay both the employer and the employees half of that. That is calculated on a Schedule SE and is associated with a Schedule C for a sole proprietor. Most self-employment income, a lot of self-employment income is reported to those who are self-employed on what's called a 1099 NEC, non-employee compensation form, specific type of 1099 form, but not always. So if you are self-employed, and let's say you're self-employed, you run a booth at the farmer's market, and you get people that just pay you in cash. Well, you're not going to get a 1099 from those people. And in those small amounts, you're not going to get a 1099 anyway. But even in the regular course of business, customers don't issue a 1099. The 1099 NECs are issued by people who are contracted with other businesses. So like the Uber drivers or the DoorDash drivers or the anybody who maybe they do some contract work, they do some painting for another company. If they're paid over $600 during the year in total from that one company, then that company is required to issue them a 1099 NEC form. But the amount that's reported on the NEC may not match, or the total amounts reported on all the 1099 NECs may not match the amount of actual self-employment income that was received. It may be less than the total amount of self-employment income that was received. It shouldn't be more than what's actually reported. So it just means that, the individual, the contractor maybe they received payments from a company that was less than $600 during the year, in which case the company would not be required to report it to them. It's still taxable though, and all of that still has to be reported on the Schedule C. So for self-employed taxpayers, they do get this. Remember when we did the calculation for self-employment tax, I think we went through a little bit of how we get this initial deduction. Not all of our self-employment income is going to be subject to the self-employment tax. We have a deduction of 7.65%. So whatever our self-employment, we total up our net self-employment income, we'll make it easy, $100,000. We get to deduct, before we calculate what our self-employment tax is, not our income tax. We don't get this deduction for income tax, only for self-employment tax. We get to deduct 7.65% of that. So 7,650. And the rest, what is it? 90 to 350. This is what's going to be subject to self-employment tax. So we do get that additional deduction that we get to take against our self-employment income. Also, if we have self-employment income under our net self-employment income is less than $400, we don't have to pay self-employment tax on it. We're still supposed to pay income tax on it, but we don't have to pay self-employment tax on that income if it's under that level. Now recall that we also have a ceiling. They're calling it a ceiling here. Officially, it's called a Social Security wage base. Ceiling kind of makes more sense because it's not going. You're not going to be taxed on any more than this, and this changes every year. This was 168.6 in 2024. I think it was like 176 something in 2025 this year. Next year is going to go up to 180 something in 2026. So people just keep chasing that limit, never quite getting to it. So any amount over and above that is not subject to Social Security tax. So here's the calculation that we would do for self-employment if we have net earnings from a sole proprietorship of $48,500. We're first going to deduct that 7.65% from it and arrive at $44,790. So $44,790, and in this case, this is an individual that had W-2 wages as well as this income. So they would have to earn an additional $43,000. Their W-2 wages were $125,400, meaning that they would have to earn an additional $43,200 before they got to that $168,600. Now they did earn more than that $43,200, but the most that would be subject to Social Security tax is $43,200. All of that, though, is going to be subject to Medicare tax. So the $43,200 is what we would multiply by 12.4%. 44, so this is where our base is different. $44,790 is going to be subject to the Medicare tax. So their total self-employment tax in this case, I'm going to sneeze. Maybe not. So disappointing. Total self-employment tax is going to be $66.56, and remember, they're also going to get an adjustment for half of that, one half of the self-employment tax. But that adjustment is not going to affect how much their self-employment tax is. It's only going to affect how much income tax they are subject to. We all recall this form, the Schedule SE, where all of that is calculated. That whole calculation we just did is baked into this form here as well. Questions about self-employment tax?